Hello friends, John here from Joan Retirees. This week brings real, document-backed news that affects every single person receiving Social Security in America. And most of it is happening quietly while July begins, exactly when one of the most important measuring periods of the entire year kicks off. I want you to hear this directly because most people won't get it from the evening news, their bank, or even from the Social Security Administration's own mailers. There are two things converging right now. The first is a deadline that keeps moving closer. The second is a financial decision window that just opened this month and only stays open through September. Today, I'm breaking both down in plain language, what they actually mean for your specific situation, and exactly what to do before that window closes. Before we get into it, hit subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next update. This is exactly the kind of thing I track every week so you don't have to. Let's get into it. Let's start with the clock that just moved. Every year, the Social Security trustees publish an official report on the financial health of the program. This year's report, released June 9th, confirms something that should concern every current and future beneficiary. The primary retirement trust fund is now projected to run dry in the fourth quarter of 2032. That's earlier than what last year's report projected, which makes this the second year in a row that date has moved in the wrong direction. According to the trustees' own explanation, part of the reason is the new tax break passed in last year's One Big Beautiful Bill, which reduced the amount of tax revenue flowing back into Social Security from beneficiaries' own checks. Good news for your tax bill today, but it speeds up the clock on the trust fund. Here's what actually happens in 2032 if nothing changes. And this is the part most coverage glosses over. Social Security does not disappear. Payroll taxes from working Americans keep flowing in, but the trust fund's reserves are the cushion that currently fills the gap between what comes in and what's owed. Without that cushion, incoming payroll taxes alone are projected to cover a little over 3/4 of promised benefits. That means an automatic across-the-board cut of roughly 22 to 23% for every recipient, regardless of age or how long you've been collecting, unless Congress acts first. Let's put real numbers on that so it isn't abstract. On an average check of around $2,800 a month, a cut in that range works out to roughly $400 to $600 less every single month. On a smaller check of $1,500, you're looking at around $330 gone. On a check closer to $2,500, it's closer to $550 vanishing from your monthly budget. That is not a hypothetical headline. It's the mathematically projected outcome of doing nothing, and the window for a gradual fix keeps getting smaller. Multiple nonpartisan groups, including actuarial associations and bipartisan policy research centers, responded within a day of the report, and they were unusually aligned in their message. The longer Congress waits to act, the more abrupt and painful any eventual fix will have to be. A gradual adjustment phased in over a decade looks very different from a sudden cut forced through at the last minute. And right now, we're on the second path, not the first. So what does this mean for you practically today? If you're already receiving benefits, nothing changes this month, this year, or even next year. The system is fully funded under current law all the way through 2032. This is not an emergency requiring action on your part right now. But it is information you need, because you are going to keep hearing politicians argue about Social Security reform for the next several years. And now you'll understand what's actually at stake. If you haven't claimed yet, this adds one more factor to your decision. Claiming earlier locks and a benefit level now, before any potential changes Congress might eventually make. Waiting until 70 means a bigger monthly check for the rest of your life, but it also means a larger share of your future income now rides on whether Congress actually acts before that 2032 deadline. There's no universally right answer here, and anyone who tells you otherwise is oversimplifying a genuinely personal decision. It depends on your health, your other income, and your own read on whether Washington will move in time. What matters is that you make that call with the real numbers in front of you, not a vague sense that Social Security might go away. Now here's the second story, and this is the one tied directly to July. Most people don't realize that the Social Security Administration doesn't just pick a number for next year's cost of living adjustment out of thin air. It's calculated from a very specific 3-month window, July, August, and September. That window just opened. Whatever inflation does over these next 3 months is what determines how much your check grows in January to 2027. The official number won't be announced until October, but independent analysts already track the data as it rolls in, and the early estimates this year are running noticeably hotter than usual, driven mainly by energy and food costs. Some analysts who've tracked these calculations for years are currently estimating the 2027 increase could land somewhere between roughly 3.8 and 4.7%. For comparison, this year's adjustment was 2.8%, adding about $56 to the average check. An increase in that higher range would nearly double that dollar amount. To make it concrete, on a benefit of $2,500 a month, the higher end of that range would add roughly $117 a month. On a smaller check of $1,500, it would add around $70. Those are real numbers showing up in real bank accounts come January, not just a headline percentage. Here's the nuance I want you to actually remember, because a bigger COLA sounds like pure good news, and in raw dollar terms, it is. But a bigger COLA also means inflation rose faster than it did the year before. The check goes up, but so does the cost of everything that check is supposed to cover: groceries, energy, healthcare. When the increase in your cost of living outpaces the dollar increase in your check, you can end up with a bigger number on paper and less actual buying power in your pocket. That gap is exactly why a growing share of retirees, recent surveys put it at well over 4 in 10, now say Social Security is their only source of income. When that's your full income, the difference between what a COLA adds and what inflation actually costs you isn't a rounding error. It's the difference between keeping up and falling behind. So what should you actually do with this July window? It depends a little on your situation. If you're already retired and collecting, the most useful thing you can do is separate the estimate from the decision. Don't restructure your budget around 4.7% when the real number could land closer to 3.8, or even shift again depending on what energy prices do in August and September. If you're still working and haven't claimed yet, this window matters differently for you. A larger COLA baked into a future claiming year can modestly change the math on waiting versus claiming early. So it's worth keeping on your radar as one more data point, not the deciding factor. For everyone, there are a few concrete things worth doing this month, regardless. First, don't make any big financial decisions based on early estimates. The real number depends on 3 full months of data we don't have yet, and energy prices in particular can swing it either direction between now and September. Second, if you also qualify for the new $6,000 senior tax deduction that came out of last year's legislation, this is a good month to sit down, either on your own or with a tax professional, and check whether your current tax withholding from your Social Security check still makes sense. That deduction lowers what many seniors owe, so some of you may be over withholding right now without realizing it, and fixing that doesn't require waiting until tax season. Third, keep an eye on Medicare Part B premium guidance as it firms up later this year, since that premium is deducted directly from your check before you ever see it, and a rising premium can quietly cancel out a meaningful chunk of whatever COLA bump you eventually get in January. It's happened before, and it's worth watching rather than assuming the full increase will show up in your deposit. None of this requires panic. It requires attention and a calendar reminder to check back in October when the real number is announced. So here's the summary for this week. The June 9th trustees report moved the Social Security Trust Fund depletion date to the fourth quarter of 2032. 1 quarter earlier than last year's projection. And if Congress doesn't act before then, every beneficiary faces an automatic cut in the low 20% range. Nothing changes for you today, but the runway for a gradual fix is now under 7 years and shrinking. At the same time, July marks the official start of the 3-month window that will set your 2027 cost of living adjustment, with early estimates running well above this year's 2.8%. Good news in dollar terms, but a reminder that rising inflation is part of why that number is climbing in the first place. Use this month to check your tax withholding against the new senior deduction, mark your calendar for the official COLA announcement in October, and don't let anyone tell you Social Security is simply disappearing. The real story is more specific, more fixable, and more time-sensitive than that. If this helped you understand what's actually happening instead of just another scary headline, hit subscribe, share it with someone who depends on their Social Security check, and I'll see you in the next one. This is John with Joan Retirees.